Thank you everyone for your attendance today. My name is Nicole Orlino. I'm an admissions officer here for the online programs of applied learning at Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health. Today we'll be discussing our spatial analysis for public health program. Joining us today will be Dr. Frank Curriero, Director of the Spatial Analysis Program, Tim Shields, Associate Scientist, and myself. My name is Nicole Orlino. I'm an admissions officer. I work with our team to assist students as they explore their options for continuing education. I'm very excited to be presenting with these two today. Frank, I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Thank you, Nicole. Like Nicole said, my name is Frank Curriero. I am professor in the School of Public Health. My degree and focus is in statistics, namely spatial statistics, which I'll touch on just briefly here in a couple slides. And so I've been working in the field of what we'll call spatial science for about the last 20 to 25 years. And I'm looking forward to telling you a little bit about that and mainly our program here over the next half hour or so.
Perfect. Tim, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks, Nicole. I am Tim Shields. I am an associate scientist in the Department of Epidemiology. I came to Hopkins with a master's degree in geography, so I have a geography perspective towards all these spatial applications. So for the last 25 years, I've been working, incorporating GIS and spatial analysis in public health.
Perfect. Thank you, Frank and Tim, for your introductions. To give everyone an idea of what we'll be covering today, Frank will take us over the industry overview. I'll really discuss why there was a need for this specific program and to give you an idea of who the program is targeted towards. He will also be going over the program details and curriculum to give you an insight on what skill sets you'll gain and what sets our curriculum apart from other programs. Our program is fully online, so Frank will give you an idea as to what online learning is like at Johns Hopkins. He will go on to discuss some of the program faculty. As for myself, I will go into admissions requirements, tuition and financial aid, and details about the scholarship we offer. We will save some time for a Q&A at the end, so please feel free as you listen to the presentation to type out any questions you have into the chat box, and we will cover those at the end with Frank and Tim. Thank you so much for your time, and Frank, please feel free to start.
Great, thank you, Nicole. So let's start off real simple. What is spatial analysis? And this is one of the fields that it really depends on who you ask. Because people can come at spatial analysis from a lot of different perspectives. You heard Tim's a geographer, I'm a statistician, and you'll see how those things are linked together under this field of spatial analysis. The interpretation of geographic information through the use of mapping software and statistical analysis. That pretty much is what I just said with Tim and I coming from our different perspectives. A lot of spatial analysis builds on the foundations in epidemiology and biostatistics. And what we like to do here at the School of Public Health, which is exemplified in our curriculum, both this online program and our on-site classes, is that we like to take a very comprehensive approach to spatial analysis. And we talk about what's called the spatial science paradigm. And it includes components of spatial data. So this is all the availability and accessibility that we all have now to spatial data. Is that it has a component of geographic information systems, which is that mapping software. People might have heard of GIS. Sometimes that's how it's the acronym that's used for that. And then a novel special feature of our program is spatial statistics. So spatial data in GIS, geographic information systems, that gets you to the map. That gets you the data, and it tells you how to map the data and map several layers of the data. But then how do you analyze those maps? I mean, we're good at visually analyzing those maps, looking at it and seeing trends and hotspots and things like this. But there's a whole field of statistics called spatial statistics that allows us to analyze the patterns we see in the map. So what we like to say here at the school is we go beyond the map with this field of spatial statistics. And that is a very unique, novel component that we have in our program that I don't think a lot of other schools have in their spatial analysis program, whether it's an on-site set of curriculum or an online program. Next slide, please. So just to give you some history of spatial analysis, it didn't start yesterday, actually back in 1854, and anybody that has taken or will take a spatial analysis class, you usually see this map as one of the first few slides in that class. This is John Snow's famous cholera map. Okay, back in 1854 in London, there was an outbreak of cholera, and that's the dots you see on the map on the left-hand side. Those are where those people were. Those were people who lived that had cholera, and at that time, cholera was thought to be an airborne pathogen. So you got it by breathing air, and obviously, what we know now is that it's more of a waterborne disease. And what John Snow did, and he's kind of known as the father of epidemiology, he plotted the pump, and then you see on the right-hand side this Broad Street water pump, because people used to go to this pump to get their drinking water. Okay, and he mapped the cases, and that's why you see those bars there, because there's multiple cases. And he showed that there was a lot more cases clustered around that water pump. Okay, and that got him to thinking that it really was a waterborne pathogen. And after he removed that water pump, those cases went away. Those cases went away. That clustering around that water pump went away, and that was sort of a very dramatic way to show the use and the power of maps and using location information, in this case, household locations of people who had cholera. Next slide, please. So we can fast forward maybe a century and a half, and this is some work that Tim, I, and other colleagues have been involved in, and you can see the maps get a little bit more fancy. And this was work we did in malaria in Southern Africa. We were mapping malaria risk and uncertainty in that risk estimate, both for what's called the dry season and the rainy season. And houses were visited by community health workers to establish whether or not anybody in the house had malaria. And then we used that data to map. That's what you see in the red and pinkish maps, whereas the spatial variation in the risk of malaria, and then in the green maps shows you the high and low areas of how certain we are, how statistically certain we are or uncertain in those risk estimates. And that's just the citation at the bottom of the slide there. Next slide, please. So you see a lot of spatial analysis in the general media, and I'll talk about the most famous one that we've all know now. But let's just start with, CDC puts out their influenza, the flu surveillance reports. They come out. They're out now, and they're out all throughout the flu season. And this is just mapping, areas where flu is more prevalent. And you can map these, I think, on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And you can sort of see the evolution of flu during the flu season. The bottom slide there is this was just an interesting article that came out in the New York Times, that talks about endangered species and the stuff we buy all mapped out. So a lot of the products we buy, the processing, the collecting of those products, the processing of those products puts a toll on the environment, namely the endangered species of that environment. And they were just mapping out some of the areas that where those endangered species are more affected by the stuff we buy. These are just some examples of what you might see in terms of the use of maps and the use of spatial analysis in the general media. Next slide, please. But probably the most famous now of the use of maps in the media and in the world is the Johns Hopkins University COVID-19 map. Okay, we just had a celebration of GIS Day. So yes, once a year there is a celebration of GIS Day in middle of November, and we have the developer who was a PhD student working on this come and speak to us about this map. And this really exemplifies the power of maps and communicating and getting people interested in a problem or in a subject area. Obviously, this is COVID-19. You can't get more important than that nowadays. But just with anything, when you map data, it really gets people thinking. Okay, and a little bit more so than just a table summary of numbers and stuff like that. Which is all this is. A map is just a posting of your data. But this JHU COVID-19 dashboard really got popular and famous over the last year and a half. And it really exemplifies, and for Tim and I, teaching. This is the most powerful example we can give on the use and benefits of mapping data, getting location information and putting it on a map. Next slide, please. So why spatial analysis? Okay. A lot of times it's like an added benefit because, when we're collecting data, you can think about data as information, right? So when we're collecting information about something, whether it's a problem, an event, an exposure, what have you, we ask a lot of questions about our data. Who, what, when, why, all these common questions. And where is another question that we can ask. Where did this happen? Where was the data collected? Okay, so getting that location information. And then once you have that location information, you can put that on a map and then you can map things. And that's where the power of spatial analysis really comes in. This use of geospatial technology is so widespread and diverse nowadays, and the market is growing at an annual rate of almost 35%. And that's from the U.S. Department of Labor Growth Industry Profile. There's an increasing demand for readily available, consistent, accurate, complete, and current geographic information. So this is data. That's what we're asking for, and we want that spatial data and the widespread availability and use of advanced technologies. I mean, when I first started in this field 20 years ago, there wasn't anything like, remote sense satellites I can get information from. There weren't cell phones that I can get tracking information from. There weren't GPS devices that we could use. I was lucky if someone came to me and said, hey, do you want to analyze this data? And oh, by the way, we had the latitude, longitude coordinates. Okay, that was great. But nowadays there's, the technologies that are out there, getting access to spatial data, the availability and the accessibility has really just exploded over the years. And now we need to educate people and students on this field because it brings in new technologies, new techniques. And so there's certainly a demand, not only for this data and analyzing this data, but a demand for educating the workforce onto this. Next slide, please. So spatial analysis for public health. I look at that title of this article and I love the title of this article. It says, what gets measured gets done. Okay, and to sort of clarify what that is saying is, there's information out there and there's data out there. And nowadays, data is everywhere. We have data warehouses where data is just sitting, and if somebody wants to go and do something, analyze something or address a problem using information or using data, they go and look to see what's already available because sometimes it's really expensive, okay, to go out and start collecting new data. So what gets measured gets done, meaning what gets measured gets analyzed and gets part of the problem solution. And leaders now recognize that there is an urgent need for more timely and more geographically specific data at the neighborhood or sometimes what we call the census tract level, okay, to efficiently and effectively address some of the most pressing problems in public health. So just getting data at the state level is no more of interest. We really want to go down to the neighborhood level, the street block level, maybe the household level, like we did with that malaria study and mapping risk of malaria. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of different career paths when you have the tools and techniques of spatial analysis. A lot of time we talk about spatial analysis as an added benefit. You may already have a career and now you add spatial analysis to that, the ability to go out and collect spatial data, acquire spatial data, know where to get it, to integrate all that within a geographic information system, okay, a GIS, and then be able to analyze that. That skill set is so novel and so unique and would really provide you a niche in pivoting your career or even starting a new career, having that as your primary focus. Possible job titles include environmental health officer, GIS software developer, or cartographer / visualization specialist. So this is making maps look the way they should look. GIS scientist or geographic information scientist, a geospatial data administrator, spatial statistician if you want to focus on the quantitative methods. And we touch on all these in our program. Because remember, our program has that comprehensive spatial science paradigm, spatial data, GIS, and spatial statistics, which really sets our program apart from a lot of other programs. And health agencies, whether it's health departments, CDC, FDA, they're all looking now for these public health professionals that have experience and skill sets in different types or different areas of spatial analysis. Next slide, please. So I'll give you some program details about this. Okay, so we have a 2-year master's program and a 1-year certificate program, and it doesn't have to be completed in the 2 years or 1 year respectively. But the master's program provides you information on, or provides you training in epidemiology, biostatistics, and spatial analysis. Okay, and the graduate certificate in spatial analysis just focuses on the spatial analysis courses. And those courses in the certificate program, the spatial courses, are the exact same courses as the spatial courses in the Masters of Applied Science in the 2 years master's program. So if students come in already having, let's say, an MPH degree, or they have enough statistical background in epidemiology already, so if they have that public health background, they may just want the spatial classes. So that's why we have this 18 credit certificate in spatial analysis. But if you want to come in and get the biostatistics and the epi in addition to the spatial classes, you would do the Masters of Applied Science. You know, our courses are geared towards working professionals. You know, it's completely 100% online, part-time. You know, our instructional approach is targeted and current. Tim and I are currently working in this field. We've been working in this field for the past 20 plus years, you know, and we're always including new information in our courses and so forth. So there's, in terms of the courses themselves, though, there's a lot of group learning, peer assessment. It's skills oriented as opposed to, you know, theoretical and concepts like that. So a lot of our teaching style is based on projects, examples, a lot of hands-on learning, because it's geared towards the working professionals, which is what we think is more appealing to that audience. You know, we focus on both local and global issues, you know, and the goal here is to prepare students to address public health problems through this multidisciplinary approach that applies the latest scientific knowledge. And spatial analysis is really one of those fields that is at the intersection of a lot of fields. You know, you have the geographer like Tim, who is focused on the GIS and getting the data and mapping the data. You have someone like myself who focuses in spatial statistics. You know, I take what Tim does as the output, the map, and that's the input to my analysis. Okay, and then we work towards analyzing those maps. And then the other leg of that tripod is somebody that is a substantive expert, whether we're working with cancer, HIV, malaria, these kind of things, or it's an air pollution exposure assessment. There would always be somebody, an expert in that. So that's when I talk about spatial analysis really being at the intersection of these several fields of study. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is some details on the curriculum. I'm not going to go through all of these. You can obviously get online. You can see these courses, and you can click on them and get the full description of those courses. But I do want to mention that, so this is the 2-year MAS. This is a 2 years master's program, and I'll speak to you in a minute how the certificate can be done in 1 year. But I just want to mainly talk about some of our spatial classes. Hopkins is split up into quarters. We call them terms. So there are 4 quarters for the entire academic year, 2 terms per each semester. So term 1 is 8 weeks. Term 2, which is what we're in now, is another 8 weeks. So there are 8-week terms. And we start students out with a spatial analysis for public health class. This is a course that's devoted mostly to learning the GIS software, the ARC Pro software, which we now use, which is developed by the ESRI company. So that would be your first 8 weeks. Your second 8 weeks, you jump into a class called Spatial Data Technologies for Mapping. This focuses on the spatial data component of that spatial science paradigm. Where do I get the data? How do I get the data? How do I get that data into my GIS? How do I integrate it with all the other data sources that I have in there? Coming from, you know, data comes from different sources. They have different formats, you know, so we have a course designed to talk about how to get that data. What technologies do we use? Is it satellite information? Is it a GPS? Is it, you know, tracking data from a phone or another tracking device? So we have a GIS class, a spatial data class, And then if you're in the MAS, you split a little bit and do a class in epi, followed by a class in statistics. And then your second year, you end with some of our other spatial classes. We have a class that's devoted just to spatial statistics. Okay, so the mapping has already been done. Now we want to analyze the map. So now we talk about statistics and how to analyze that map. And then we have our last spatial analysis class, which is called Spatial Applications. And pretty much that is a project-oriented class where we give students the data, we give them the objectives, and we say go. And you have to go back to what you learned in GIS, how to, for example, geocode something, how to link it to census information, and then how to statistically analyze it. So it's kind of bringing all your courses together. There's also a course at the end there called Integrative Activity. Okay, so it's sort of like this capstone experience. Okay, like a thesis in other master's programs. And so we have a course just on that you will go through and kind of have a new project, one of your own choosing, that you could bring into the course and analyze it from start to finish. One thing I should mention about that integrative activity course, again, this separates our program from some other programs out there, is that we allow you to bring in your own data. So if you have a problem that either you're very interested in, or that in your current job that is current and they want analyzed, you can bring that data in and build your integrated activity, that capstone or that culminating experience around that data set and that analysis. It's not required that you bring your own in. If you don't, we have several available for students to pick from. But that's a really interesting feature of our program, where we allow students to bring in their own data and work on that. And you don't work on it just in that last term of your second year. You start actually in the summer between year 1 and year 2 if you're in the master's program. So you're bringing that data in and you're working it through some of the other classes you see here, Spatial Analysis Lab 1 and Lab 2 and so forth. So there's other courses scattered throughout here that are related to spatial analysis, but those 4 I mentioned are the primary ones. The certificate students, they would take the GIS class and the spatial data classes in terms 1 and 2, and then in terms 3 and 4, they would go right into the applied spatial statistics class and the spatial applications class. So certificate students don't do that integrated activity, that culminating experience. So like I said, there's a lot on this slide, a lot of details on this slide. I highlighted the spatial classes. You're welcome to go online and get the full description of all the courses that are here. Next slide, please. So online learning at the school. So, the school is an expert in online learning, and it was an expert before the pandemic. We've all been online a lot because of the pandemic. Hopkins is now starting to come back in a hybrid mode. But even before the pandemic, we've had 20 plus years experience in online learning, and courses are developed with high production value. So there's a lot of also online course activities to keep students engaged throughout the program. One feature is what's called the discussion forum. So for every course, you have a website. It's called Course Plus, where you go to, and all the material is listed there. All the recorded lectures are there, the homework, all that kind of stuff. But there's also a discussion forum, which is sort of a live evolving platform where students can post questions or comments about anything they're learning in class. And their peers can then jump in and respond to that, as well as faculty, Tim and I, and our teaching assistants often monitor the discussion forum. So that becomes a really rich component of the online courses that keeps students engaged. So you can post something, 10 o'clock at night, and somebody may be online and go ahead and respond to it, or the next morning. So it's just really nice feature. And because the course lectures are recorded, it really provides a lot of flexibility in terms of the learning, fitting into your schedule rather than the other way around. And there's a 24/7 help desk with the online learning at the school, which is, again, another great feature to have. Next slide, please. So here is your esteemed faculty that teaches a lot in the spatial analysis program. You see myself and Tim on there. We've got Elizabeth Gollop, who teaches along with Derek Nye, who also teaches a lot of the EPI courses. You have John McGrady, who is an award-winning instructor teaching the biostatistics classes, and Aruna Chandran teaches a lot of the supplemental classes, the supporting classes on development and sort of giving you the breadth and the depth of public health in the 2 years, in the 2-year master's program. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think that stops what I have to say. I'll now send it back over to Nicole to finish up a few slides.
Thank you, Frank. I'm now going to take some time to go over the admissions requirements. And if you are interested in moving forward, there are some important things you need to know about the admissions process. All our applications are processed online through Sophus and Sophus Express to streamline your application. For our master's degree, the application is done through Sophus, and our certificate application is done through Sophus Express. The requirements for education are a minimum of a bachelor's degree from a regionally accredited college or university. The committee will be looking for candidates to have a sufficient prior quantitative coursework or alternative evidence of quantitative ability. We do require a current resume or CV to be uploaded into the online portal. The letters of recommendation requirements are 1 letter for the certificate application and 3 for the master's. The statement of purpose is going to be a big part of our application process. This is where you get to communicate to the admissions committee why you are pursuing this program, what you hope to gain from it, and what your ultimate career goals are. For our international students, if English is not your first language, you may need an English proficiency exam. We do accept either the TOEFL or the IELTS. For those who have obtained their education outside of the United States, it is a requirement that you undergo a course-by-course credential evaluation via World Education Services. We encourage you to start this credential evaluation early to gather any required documents and to make sure that evaluation is done in a timely manner. We are very used to working with students on this at the Office of Admissions, so if this is something you need assistance with or you have any additional questions about, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to help you with that. Looking over the admissions information, our applications are reviewed on a rolling basis, meaning you do not need to wait until the deadlines posted on this slide to hear back from the committee with a decision. Our applications are now open for the fall of 2022. We do encourage students to apply early so you can receive your decision earlier and start preparing for that upcoming term. The application deadline to apply for the master's is going to be June 1st, and our certificate deadline is going to be July 1st. We are here to assist you throughout the applications. If you have any questions or concerns, you do have that support system with us. We do only enroll once per year, so this is important to know if you are excited about the program, you're ready to go ahead and apply. To provide insight on the kind of investment you'll be making, we've listed our financial information here, as well as some information about the Financial Aid Office for those who are eligible to utilize other financial resources such as FAFSA. So they will be your best resource to connect with on that. For the current school year, the tuition is $1,233 per credit. We do offer a partial OPAL scholarship that covers $474 per credit, which leaves students responsible for the remaining $759 per credit. This scholarship is specific funding to our OPAL programs, which is our online programs of applied learning. If you are admitted into the program, you are automatically awarded that OPAL scholarship. There is nothing additional you'll need to do to receive it. So if you are planning financially, you will want to plan for the $759 per credit at the current tuition rate. And then, of course, keeping in mind our tuition rates and scholarships are reassessed each spring. And of course, any changes will be updated on the website. And then as promised, we do have time for our Q&A, and there are some questions coming in, so go ahead and pull those up. What ideal quantitative background are you looking for in applicants?
Sorry, I was muted. Quantitative background, we want somebody with experience in statistics. Now, in the master's program, we provide 2 stat classes, okay? But prior to that, if you come in with some prior background and you're interested in the certificate program, then we do require some preliminary quantitative background in statistics. We're talking things of like regression, linear regression, Poisson regression, logistic regression, things like that, that would require for a quantitative background, and some knowledge in a statistical computing package, SAS, R, something like that.
Perfect. Thank you. Will I need to know how to use any of the software prior to starting classes?
No, not at all. Some students come in with either a lot or a little or none, mostly none, experience with GIS. And so Tim takes you through a whole course teaching you the ARC Pro software. When we get to statistics, we actually use R, the R statistical computing environment. And we do have preliminary information on getting students up to speed with learning R. So no software knowledge is required. We teach it all.
Perfect. Do you need a background in public health to apply to the certificate program? Multiple statistics courses, but not epidemiology or biostats.
Well, biostats and statistics, kind of the same thing. It's just biostat is maybe applied more to public health applications when you're doing your homework. So having statistics background is certainly important for the certificate program. The epidemiology, whether or not how much, if you have sort of, on the job experience in public health, we kind of evaluate these applications on a case by case basis. Definitely need the quantitative stuff. Less certain on how much of the epi or the public health is required. I would certainly say to apply or to reach out to us separately, and we can discuss some of that on a case by case basis in terms of how much do you have and how much do you actually need. But I would lean more on the quantitative stuff. The multiple statistics courses is certainly preferred.
Perfect. Thank you. Are pre-recorded lectures released on a schedule to keep students on the same page in the forum discussions?
Yeah, I believe they're all released on Sunday night. And so every week, there's sort of like an agenda for each week. Yes, to keep students on the same schedule. And there's assignments due on a regular basis too, which again is keeping students on a regular basis. And I'll just I'll answer this other question I see up there about is it live online learning, or they're just recorded videos that you review over time? This is a great question. And it's a hybrid mix between those two. Obviously the core content of the lectures are pre-recorded. Okay, so you'll hear Tim's voice and see him in lectures, or me, and then the other professors in the epi and biostat classes as well, if you're taking the MAS. But in terms of the live stuff, for each course we have 3 or 4 what's called live talks, where in the evening Tim and or I hop on a Zoom, and students have that link and they can come on. And sometimes we have a small agenda in terms of what we want to talk about, but it would be this kind of interaction where you see us, we're live, and you guys can share your videos as well during those live talks. And we sort of sometimes we go over issues that we saw pop up in the discussion forum that a lot of people are having questions about, or about homework questions that were showing up a lot. And so that kind of gives more of that live feel to it. And then we leave some of that time in that live talk. It's always scheduled for an hour for just free form. So if anybody wants to talk about anything about the course, what's going well, what's not going well, and so forth. So that live talk is a great way to connect in a live setting with students. Also, the teaching assistants, the office hours. We have 2 TAs per our spatial classes, and they hold several hours a week on office hours, and those are live. So you would see them a lot of times. You'll share your screen with them, or they'll share their screen with you, so you can work on their computer and that kind of stuff, and get a lot of questions answered.
Thank you. Can someone with a master's degree in epidemiology and public health apply directly into the second year of this program?
Well, the second year, that would mostly apply to the certificate program. So you can't take half of the spatial classes, if that's what the question was asking about. But the certificate program does the 4 spatial classes in 1 year. So in one, when you first join a certificate program, you'll take spatial analysis 1 and 2, which is the GIS and the spatial data classes with Tim, and you'll have a certain cohort in there. You'll have the people that are in the first year of the master's program. And then in third and fourth term of that year, January to May, you'll have my classes on spatial statistics and spatial applications. And your other students in there will be the second year master's students. So if you have a degree or experience in EPI and public health, the certificate is the best way to go. We can't split up that certificate and just let students take a year 2 mix of classes. So you have to take a certificate, which is the full 18 credits of spatial analysis classes.
Frank. For viewing the recorded seminars and for working hands-on data parts, are we working locally or via a VPN to JHU servers where software and data reside?
You're working locally, and Tim can speak a little bit to this as well, that you download the software and it's yours. It's yours to keep, and you can, and when you're done with this program, I think right before you leave, you can hop on and get another year's license version of that. So you have the software, you're doing all your work locally. The R software that we use, you will download that to your local machine as well. That's free. So yeah, so everything is done locally.
Right. What are the job prospects for this program?
I think they're really great because you have this niche now of spatial analysis and ability to get spatial data, map it, but then also to analyze that maps with the spatial statistics and the spatial applications courses we give you. And I've got to believe that is a strong niche to in terms of job and securing jobs. I consult sometimes with the CDC, and they have a unit down there called GRASP. It's a geospatial research, and I can't remember the rest of the acronyms, but they were prior to the pandemic, they were about 50 or 60 or so in size, and all these people have knowledge in GIS and in various other applications, spatial statistics, remote sensing, and stuff like that. Given the pandemic, I think they more than doubled their size, and there's just a need for people to do this mapping and analyzing maps. And that COVID dashboard I showed, and I'm sure everybody has seen before. Dashboards are now the whole way, right? Everybody wants to do a dashboard. We built dashboards now already using the technology that you can get started with in our program. So we built a dashboard for Lyme disease. We did a COVID project where we had another accompanying dashboard. So this technology there is really popular, and I can imagine having some expertise, skill set in spatial analysis would really help. I'll let Tim weigh in if he's got some other further thoughts to add.
Sure, thanks, Frank. Yeah, I just wanted to add in, so I guess we've been going for 5 years now. But on a very regular basis, Frank and I get asked to produce a letter of recommendation for a job. So I can see a lot of this traffic, but I can see that our students, some stay in their current jobs, their current roles, and they apply these skills there, but others move on to other opportunities. And from those, I kind of keep a quasi list, but I see some students actually get faculty positions at a couple universities. Some have started work at CDC. I know EPA has also hired some of our students. I know other state government health departments have hired our students. I know like Washington State and California specifically. So, and then also there's a number who go into actually Maryland too. Maryland, that was an environmental one, the Maryland Environmental Department. But also, in addition to that, our private firms. Some people have gone into GIS work, GIS consulting. A big data firm tackling opioids up in New York hired one of our students. So, it kind of runs the gamut of where students go, how they utilize their new skills and their new degree.
Do we learn SAS at any point?
No. The stat classes that are taught if you're in the master's program and the spatial statistics stuff that I teach is all done in R. But if you have knowledge of SAS, that's always helpful because you've worked then in a statistical computing package, and once you know one, learning others after that comes a lot easier than if learning it for the first time.
Frank, maybe you want to touch on your learning style with R, in terms of the code and everything like that.
Yeah, so I was in a faculty meeting one time, and the question came up about, well, how do we teach people, like R or something like that? And somebody just, one of the faculty just raised up the manual and said, just give them this. And everybody chuckled, but it was a bit short-sighted. And I think students need a little bit more than just handing them the manual. So we have labs in the classes that specifically cover spatial computing and how to do the coding in R. In my third term class, I give you all the code because in that class, you're learning spatial statistical concepts to analyze the maps. And that's what I want you to focus on, okay? And I give you all the code and you just pretty much have to copy and paste it and run it. Your problem then is to interpret that and see how that's answering the questions that are being asked, okay? And then once you get through that course, then in the fourth term class, then we can focus on you doing your own code. And you go back to what you learned in the spatial statistics course, use that as a template, and then start changing some of that coding around to answer the specific questions, either about your integrative activity or what's going on in the spatial applications course in fourth term. So there is a lot more hand-holding, and Tim follows that as well in learning the ARC Pro software too.
Can we demonstrate proficiency on statistics and other programming knowledge through Coursera or edX courses?
I'm not quite sure what is being asked.
I believe so. There are some courses available on Coursera that may be related to statistics, biostats specifically. So I think that's what they're trying to get at.
Okay, so yes and no. Again, this is something that we would probably evaluate on a case-by-case basis, and I don't mean that as a turn. Okay, I mean that really reach out to us, with the specific courses that you're thinking about. Maybe we can recommend some courses. There are a lot of biostatistics faculty at Johns Hopkins that teach on Coursera, and so we would want to gear you towards some of those courses. I'm not familiar with the EDX courses, but any background that you have or can get prior to coming into the program was certainly helpful. And yes, it can be used in certain cases on a case-by-case basis to demonstrate proficiency in knowledge of statistics and even epidemiology if they have Coursera courses on that. Sorry, I didn't quite understand it at the beginning. I get it now.
No, you're fine. Thank you, Frank. I can actually answer the next one. I'm already in the DRPH program. Is there anything different for the application process? So for this particular one, you will need to go ahead and go into Sophos, as mentioned. There may be some documents that stay in there. However, you will need to write a new personal statement. So of course, with that personal statement, of course, going back to how important that is and the one that the committee takes most into consideration. But yes, just double check and we will connect with you offline as well to see what you may be needing additionally. Do you have to complete the program in 2 years?
No, I'm sorry, I thought you were going to answer that one. I think you have up to 5 years to complete the master's degree. But yeah, a lot of students start. Life happens. I mean, we're all professionals. So a lot of people have full-time jobs, full-time families, and when I say life happens, I mean that in the sense that sometimes you have to put down a semester or take a year off, and circle back to it. Obviously, we would want you to finish it in 2 years for the master's program, just because it keeps you engaged, and I think it'll be a lot better for you, and a lot better for us. But like I said, things happen that some people have to take a year or so off, and so no, you don't have to complete it in 2 years. And I see another question down here, and Nicole, I'll just jump to this one. Does the
Yeah.
OPAL program follow the same academic calendar as the Johns Hopkins generally? And that's a great question. And I really want to stress that an OPAL student is looked at no different than I don't want to call it the regular student, but the student that would come to the university on site. Okay. Yes, you follow the same academic calendar. You get the same emails about seminars on site. You are invited to graduation just like with the other students, and you graduate with them. You graduate under the OPAL program. So we had all those students walk. I think it was 3 years ago, Tim, that we had our last, or 2 years ago, we had our last on-site graduation where students actually walked, and so forth. And even if students are local or semi-local, or for some reason are passing through the Baltimore area, we encourage you to stop by, and meet with Tim and I and maybe some of the TAs in person, and so forth. And I think now, given that the pandemic and everything went online with Zoom, I think a lot of seminars may continue to be broadcast both on site in person and online as well. And again, but OPAL students are considered just like regular students at the university.
Perfect. Can you test out of classes if you have a significant background in either GIS or epidemiology?
Oh, Tim, help me out on this one. I can't remember.
I think this goes into a case-by-case basis as well. I do remember a couple students were able to skip one class and take a class in a different Master's of Applied Science program. They had substantive GIS experience, and actually that student ended up getting a green light to not take the GIS class, and then came back and took the GIS class because he wanted the more public health version of the GIS. So, but I think in general it's possible if you demonstrate a lot of background in that class. But I know that's certainly a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, definitely. But you still need to get that 50.5 credits for the master's or 18 credits for the certificate. So that's why Tim mentioned that one student actually filled that slot with another program that was being offered in one of the other OPAL programs. I think there's like 7 or so, 8 maybe OPAL programs that are out there now. So you would have to pick up another class just to get the credits that would accumulate. So the knowledge base would transfer over, so you can not take the course, but the credits don't transfer over in a sense. You still have to take credits to get to the 50.5 or 18 for the certificate.
Perfect, thank you. So I think this is our last question. So this person is inquiring kind of percentage. So trying to understand the percent of time spent studying on statistics, ArcGIS, R, and then analyzing current or published studies, etc.
So,
well, the courses kind of divide these up, right? So
yeah,
you take just a course in ArcGIS, and then that's all we're studying is ArcGIS. Likewise, when you get to spatial stat, that's like 100% of what your focus is on. Within them, each of them, or all of our courses, we introduce publications and have some discussion on some published manuscripts. But I'd say the majority is hands-on on the focus of what that course is.
Yeah, and both the certificate and the master's program takes the 3rd term course on Spatial Analysis Journal Club, where we actually do pick out articles out of the literature and discuss them. And the students are responsible for adding discussion points to the discussion forum. We have a live talk for each of those as well. So like Tim said, each term you're focused on either an EPI class, an ArcGIS class, statistics class, and so forth.
Perfect. So thank you, Frank and Tim, and thank you all for your attendance today. So our team at the admissions office will contact you directly in the next few days to assist in answering any additional questions that you may have. If you do want to connect with someone immediately, my contact information is on the slide here. So feel free to reach out via phone or email. If you are excited about this program and you see it as part of your future, please feel free to use the scan codes you see on the screen to move forward with your application. Again, we have our team here to assist you throughout the entire application process if you do need that assistance. But thank you again so much for your time, Frank and Tim.
And Nicole, I'll just add that if students want to talk to, prospective students want to talk to Tim and I directly, they are to contact you first at the information you provided there, mainly an email, and then you can direct them over to us. So we're certainly open to talk to you on anything we talked about today or things that we weren't able to get to today.
Perfect. Thank you so much.